Hi everyone. So this is a bit of a different video. I'm sitting here trying to think, how do I actually feel about Total War Troy? I'm I am Total War diehard since the days of Shogun 1 up to now. I've played every single one of them. I've loved most of them. Thrones of Britannia is really the only game out of the entire franchise that I have not played at least 100 hours in, and it's really just that one game in the whole franchise that's really given me pause as far as the direction of CA. And really, it's not really so much the straw that broke the camel's back, it's really just the most egregious example of little trends that I've been noticing inside of my favorite game franchise. So, after seeing the campaign reveal, the announcement trailer, hearing some details about the game, it all just kind of washed over me, and I sort of just forgot the game was even announced, just because I'm, I don't know, it's nothing really about it. Nothing grips me about the narrative, really. Um, Maybe I'm just too. I've played too much Total War, and the idea of going back to Hoplite Warfare is not immediately engrossing. Maybe that's on me. But I recently forced myself to try and play Thrones of Britannia again, just to see if I could get any kind of enjoyment out of that thing that I bought. But that was also another one of the games I some of you may have seen it, where I did a little stream of it where I was trying to make myself have fun with it, but the stream frame rate was awful. I was still dialing in OBS settings. I just I couldn't bring myself to actually try it again, because even just that 1 hour was enough for me. I didn't want to at all. It was so boring. That game is so boring. That's not the point. It got me thinking. Okay, next game in the Saga series, what's it gonna be? Like, is it gonna be learning from their mistakes, or is it gonna be just more of the same? Where I'm really afraid that it's gonna be more of the same, because I don't know. I know that it's a Sagas game, so therefore the scope is rather narrow. But that's kind of the issue that I'm discovering that I have with the game, and might be the thing that might be the reason why I'm not more excited about it, is because the one flaw in the in choosing this setting, not the one flaw, uh, is that they're not going ham with it. Like, why would you play this setting and not, like, to even reference Minotaurs? Like, we'll get to the other details. I just want to go through right now all the details. Let's just react to what details are given as we are given them, just so that we don't miss anything. Starting with not the campaign. Let's go with the announcement trailer.
Rage, goddess. Sing of the rage of Peleus' son, Achilles. Murderous.
That is come on. I mean, seriously. I mean, are you not even gonna try that? He looks so Roman. Like, that's not a Greek anything. That's just a Roman. Bring it back to here. Like, Apparently that's a Greek. Now, why would I stop so immediately on such a minute detail? Because I have been told that this is a historical game. I've been told by the Total War Facebook page, I've been told by randos, I've been told by the developers now in press releases that this game is not going to be a fantasy game. It's going to be a historic game. Well, with my historic eye, I see that historically you can put a Roman on your Rome Total War, but for some reason, you're putting a Roman on your Troy Total War. Makes sense there. Doesn't make sense there.
Doomed.
Hero duels in this would be bad. Okay, now hold on. What the fuck is going on here? Again, now I see. I just had the thought: Total War, Hero Duels, Three Kingdoms, innovations to the series, fantastic. But then I know it's a trailer. I know it's supposed to be a trailer, and it's supposed to be interesting and cool. But let's just go back just a little. It's supposed to be gripping because of cinema. What the fuck are all these people doing? What is this guy doing? What are these guys doing? Where they're pairing? Where's their sergeant yelling at them to get back in formation? Like, look at this. This is emblematic of what CA means when they say we're going to make a historic title. Total War has never been a historic franchise. I say that having played all of them. It was, at one point, pretty close to being a historic franchise back in Shogun and the first Medieval, but Rome Total War came out, and 3D, like, actually trying to portray the game they wanted to portray in a 3D setting, or a more, a high-fidelity 3D setting, I should say, the art direction shifted into something that they were comfortable with, which is this. It's not history, it's Hollywood history. It's the Hollywoodization, the Hollywoodization, the whatever the fuck you want to call it, because that's where this comes from. This is I say it's emblematic because you can feel it baked into the art direction of pretty much everything in the trailer that I'm seeing so far. Is that they have fight scenes where the two factions are just a mosh pit of dudes scattered into each other, despite the fact that they make formation-based, pseudo-historical setting games. They still, for some reason, in their trailer, turned a blind eye to little historic details like that, where it's just like, in no circumstance, and right next to the wall, no less. Like, why? Okay, so there are I don't see any archers. Nothing. Like, why would you be fighting right outside the wall like that? Also, that armor. I already have an example pulled up. That armor is ridiculous. This feels like like Roman. I keep saying Roman because this, like, there's so much of that feel, but it's not. It doesn't even feel Roman because it feels like more futuristic than Roman, but it's more stylized than a lot of medieval armor was. Even though medieval armor got pretty ridiculous, but for this sort of style of armor to be that, or for that type of armor to be that stylized, this Mycenaean armor, this sort of, like, they're kind of going for that, look, kind of, where what we expected for, you see, that's what it looks like to me. This is what that armor looks like to me. It looks like Marvel Hollywood movie armor, prop armor. It looks like something Asgardians would wear in Thor. When, I mean, even this, like artist renditions, they can get pretty crazy, but if you look at that, that's just painting. That's still, like, all those shapes and stuff, those aren't intricate metal work. That's not even something like, and this is just artist renditions. Here we have reenactors. Eastern Mediterranean armor, that's still pretty much the same area of armor, but it's very, very basic. And then you have to ask yourself, this is clearly a unique, like this appearance of armor is actually quite unique. So why wasn't it popular in the setting? It has kind of it's almost like a not callback, but like a proto build of the Lorica Segmentatum, where it's like this layered plates, as you can see right here. No, I don't want to go to your website, bro. How it's just like a skirt, basically. That kind of protection, that alone is an interesting aesthetic to pull from, because in this time period, you can actually see it in the battle map, the campaign map, in the architecture. Persian and Greek design influences played off of each other. And that's pretty much true of all civilizations around the Mediterranean. So the fact that their armor is so dressed, because this right here, this looks very Persian to me in terms of just the very plain helmet and the focus on torso and not much else. I mean, yeah, there's greaves and stuff, but like clearly the most important piece is of the helmet, cuirass, and the greaves, the cuirass. So that all makes sense to me, as far as like, if you're going to put it in this setting, you should probably look to blending the, because especially if I don't know what the campaign map situation is going to look like, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be like the area around Troy, and maybe some of the areas of Greece, maybe. And I'm speaking, like, I need to stay on topic. We're gonna get into all that other shit anyway. Point is, this armor looks good enough to me. I don't understand why they had to go and do like what is this? You know, like, what is all of that? All of this intricate shit. It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. It just serves to make the armor look like it was made out of plastic. Like it's flimsy and... Archers don't do that. Like, why would archers just sit there and hold their arrows? And apparently the archers are up there anyway, and they haven't been shooting this whole time. We were still figuring out how to do archery back then, how to actually use the archer. What is that prow? That big, just triangle. It looks like he has a Christmas tree growing out of his head.
What are the children of men but as leaves that drop at the wind's breath?
No. I have no issue with the setting itself if you want to actually approach it historically. That's fine. There's actually a lot of cool shit you could do with the setting. Pretty much every setting in Warfare has a lot of stuff that you could do. You can make any game that you can conceive of. First off, that needs to be said. You can think of any concept. I want to make a game about putting permanent marker symbols, like drawing on newspapers and posting it on strangers' houses. Just a random concept, an entirely random concept with the proper gameplay functions, the proper mechanics, with proper implementation. You can make a great game out of that simple concept, following that simple concept of what I just said, what I just fucking pulled out of my ass. So that being said, I understand fully that this setting has potential for all kinds of gameplay implications. But, for instance, the hero battles, like Three Kingdoms has shown, same with Warhammer, that the hero combat aspect of Total War, there's something to it as far as adding a layer to the battles that's just kind of been missing this whole time. And Medieval 2, Total War kind of messed around with it with special abilities given to some generals in the Late Kingdoms expansion. But now we're seeing, with Three Kingdoms, we're seeing the actual full implementation of choreographed duels, and having a further expansion on that set of mechanics in terms of what if you could finish an entire battle with just a duel? You know, like what if an honorable general and an honorable general meet, and before the battle even takes place, like kind of like demanding surrender in some Total War games, you in siege situations, you can like if a general challenges another general to a duel, they have to fight it out, and that determines the battle. They run away or something. I don't know. Just something like that, like having more gameplay implications aside from just showing up on the field and duking it out like Three Kingdoms, even though that was fun. In this setting, because the emphasis is historic and there's less feasible real estate to mess around in terms of what kind of game you actually can make. For instance, because this guy right here, because you're not doing fantasy elements, that limits the scope of the game that you can make. So it then behooves Creative Assembly to focus on the things that would improve the type of game that they're conceptualizing, which is clearly one that has emphasis on heroes, on a more historic focus rather than the full fantasy focus. And just expanding on those things in general in terms of adding gameplay mechanics, definitely the way to go. Let's see what the campaign map reveals.
Peggy 16.
In this age of myth, heroes walk the earth.
Beautiful map.
Yet it takes only a single impulsive act to...
So it looks like we are in Greece. We start off in Greece. Hooray for Greece. A lot of detail on this map. Like, look how much detail that is. Those little houses. I think those are little houses. Crazy.
Audacious Paris,
crazy amount of
Prince
detail
of
that
Troy,
I don't need.
takes beautiful Helen from her palace in Sparta. As they sail away, Helen's husband, King
like
Menelaus, cursed.
The artistic direction, like all the background elements, the actual skybox, I guess you can call it. That looks awesome. Being like pulled from a painting or pulled from a vase. That's really cool.
He will bring his errand wide.
Now you see the architecture there looks really good on the strat models. That looks like a solid city, a believably Greek city. There's no pomp, there's no, just intricate detail for detail's sake, just because we're in a 3D environment and we can do whatever the fuck we want, so why not? You know, that's actually it's obviously a different style of, you know, like it's meant to be like a low resolution model of a city on a map, obviously, so they can get away with that. But that should be telling, you know, that to me, like, of course, the character model there is higher fidelity, more detail, higher resolution texture, all that, yada yada. And that looks good for what it is, for all those things that I just listed. But aesthetically, just the design choices of how they put that model together, I like the city. The city makes more sense. The city looks more historic rather than the person standing next to it. And as far as the map is concerned, while like how I kind of dismissively said I don't need all that detail, there's a wolf there, there's a bridge there, there's a river there, like it's all really pretty. It all looks pretty. But think about the gameplay implications of this. This area right here. This is where you were playing the game. That means if you want to get over here, this is a corridor. Just a solid corridor. And there are so many fucking areas that are like that. This, for instance, just one lonely road stretching off into oblivion. The world feels so cramped. Because of the way that map real estate is laid out, these cities feel like houses on a greater map. Like, because of the scale of the map, these mountains, the trees, all of this is terrain that has features resembling something smaller than the area that it is supposed to represent, if that makes sense. For instance, I have seen a river stretching between two mountains. You know, I've seen what looks like, because it's right here, this looks like a little house. If this, for instance, if this river was to scale, if this bridge was to scale, this right here is not, obviously not large enough to be a city of thousands. Just like this region is not big enough to be the region that it's supposed to be. It's not. There's no place in Greece that's like that.
Whatever.
Or I mean, there are, but it's like a couple acres. You know, it's not a whole region's worth of geography there, which is really what was lost in Medieval 2 when they moved away from their more simplistic map designs. Empire Total War had it kind of a mix of it, where there was a lot of open map space, so you could maneuver a little bit more. And that's really what's lacking here, is just space to move, choices to move. The AI on the campaign, and this is the reason why, okay? It was a choice, not just from an aesthetic place. Just they didn't just say, oh well, our maps need to look pretty. The map looks this pretty because it's hiding the inferiority of the campaign AI. That's my idea. That's my theory. There's really no reason to bottleneck the campaign maps the way that they have been in the last games, the last iterations of the games. And there's no reason to do it other than the fact that the campaign AI was absolute garbage at defending their territory in Medieval 2, unless you cheat, and unless you made them cheat their ass off by ramping the difficulty up or getting mods. It's really, really easy to manipulate the campaign AI. So they have to do what they had to do. They had to take that AI power and focus it down a fucking valley right at you. And I mean, it works. It absolutely, that's the other half of it, is that it actually works in terms of the game that they're making. The actual design philosophy that informs all of this, it is actually all for a reason. They're not, just like they're not saying, I'm gonna make my map pretty just because I want to make it pretty. No, they're not doing that. They're also not saying, I want to make my game simplistic because I just want to make it simplistic. That's not true. There is a reason. There is a hindrance within pretty much just the engine of the game where it's forced on them pretty much to continue making the game that they want to make. But that's the balance, it seems, between having a detailed game and having a shallow game. Where, I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling now at this point, but let's continue.
King Agamemnon, wide ruling lord of finely walled Mycenae, hears his brother's call. He summons Achaean heroes from far and wide. Among them, swift-footed Achilles and Odysseus of the silver tongue. All mortals' thoughts turn towards the high peak of fog-shrouded Olympus. Even warriors marching to war and slaughter must seek the favor of the gods.
In the form of buffs and campaign
While Paris
effects.
and Helen flee east to Troy.
Now, you see,
A formidable...
no naval combat. Maybe this is also a product of me being a salty old Total War veteran at this point, but I fucking want naval combat. Why is the game getting smaller in scope? Why are agents being taken out? Why are diplomatic options like region trading and stuff like that being taken out, except for I will attack and yada yada, all that shit? Naval combat gone? Really? Like, how long in this franchise until they're just like, heroes, we're done with that. Scrap it. Let's just try random shit again. Why? Why would you do that? The game, especially when Empire came out, there was this feeling of, okay, this game is getting huge. With the idea of maps, having several different campaign maps linked together by border zones that are transitionary zones. Fantastic idea. Absolutely fantastic idea. It was in one game. That's it. That's what I fear about the Three Kingdoms stuff, is that a lot of those good ideas will just be in Three Kingdoms and then not implemented into anything else. Because they do that often, or just little features that don't work for them, they'll ditch. Like naval combat. Now, I've already had it told to me, there's not any naval combat in the War of Troy, or the Trojan War. It didn't happen. As if you know exactly what fucking happened in the Trojan War. You know? Like, there might have been great naval conflicts that we probably would have heard about them. But there's also probably a lot of other battles that we would have heard about. To be honest. Like, there's a lot that we don't know about. Like, just think about the Mycenaeans alone. Not a fucking clue. We have no idea how they fought. There's theories. Very, very well researched theories, but just theories. And then to put that setting into a game where the whole point of it is to spend the afternoon rewriting history, that means I want to stop the Trojan warfare in the Aegean. What if that's my plan, CA? What if my plan is to never have a fucking land war in Troy? It's to blockade all their ports and turn their allies against them and all that kind of stuff. Can't do that now, or at least I could, but I'll auto-resolve everything, and I don't want to do that. Naval combat should be in the fucking game. Naval combat should be in every single Total War game, period. No exception at all. Absolutely no exception at all. Even in places where it doesn't even really make it sense. I'm gonna say that. Like, there needs to be, if there is a way of transitioning units, be it space vessels in the inevitable 40k Total War. It's gonna happen, y'all. It's gonna be amazing. Naval fleets, that kind of thing. If there's a way to navigate that terrain, there better be a way to fight in it. Because especially like this. Look how much of this map is fucking water. Think about that. A major terrain feature of this campaign is going to be a sea. So, like, what? Why the fuck would you not have naval combat? That is such a terrible oversight. And one of the things that I was actually pretty excited for, I was like, okay, they're going to be doing Troy Total War. Surely that means there's going to be naval combat because of the engine. Like, this is the Rome 2. That's what's... I didn't even think about that. Like, this is a setting closer to the other games that had naval combat. Yet they decide to implement something that was from medieval, or not medieval, but Warhammer, with the island battles for naval combat instead of having legit naval combat. Well, it's not really mind-blowing. It makes sense. Because they don't have to develop it. They don't have to spend money making it better. Because it's something that I keep getting told that people don't play naval combat. Everybody that I talk to that has played Total War, all my personal friends, we all play naval combat. So I guess we're just the minority in this. But I would also like to point out that I have friends who don't even play the battles. Don't even play the battles. They don't give a shit about the battles. I have a friend who plays the battles on 3x speed. He cannot play the game unless it's at 3x speed because it's that fucking boring to him. That, I mean, why not cater to him? You know? Like, I get that the object here is the majority rules, but what if the majority said, hey, your battles are shit and they're boring? What, does that mean that we're all going to be playing at 3 times speed now? No. At least that's not what we should do. Just like we shouldn't just rip features out of this game. It should be made to be better with each iteration. I can't believe that it blows my mind to think that they would remove agents and naval combat just because that they were features that some people complained about. And I complain about them too. Like, there are that's not me saying that those two systems in terms of how they were implemented are perfect, because they're not. But even I can see the value in them. It only takes one port assault battle that goes right for you to see why having naval combat in Warhammer Total War would have been the fucking greatest thing ever. All that copyright trademark shit with Man of War aside, I don't think that really was I don't think that was ever an issue, to be honest, because that's a very specific gameplay set. And with the introduction of new units and with the sort of lore interpretation that they're doing with the, what were they called? Pirates of the Coast? Vampirates? With that sort of freedom for the license, they could have made up their own naval units, their own gameplay systems, and we could have had a total warized, something like that, version of having Warhammer naval combat. We absolutely could have had it. We could have had high elf mages shooting fireballs from the crow's nest at dwarven battleships, shooting rocket barrages with giant cannons on them, all that awesome shit. Port assaults, you know, I mean, dwarven Higgins boats hitting the beaches of an orc settlement to go out and clear them out. Come on. Battleships. Amazing. Point is, fucking naval combat, man. Come on, why not?
Achaean army musters in the west.
That's a lot of ocean, that's a lot of water.
As Hector greets Paris at the gates of Troy.
It's a lot of water, so that means we're going to be doing a lot of little island battles.
Wind from the
Does not
west
sound fun.
raises the dust at his feet. He looks to his brother and asks, What have you done?
We can't auto-resolve all that, or we could, but it would be boring, so bring your ships ashore and let's have a siege. I mean, it would be cool to have an actual port assault. Like, think back to the Troy, the movie. Like, that's what they always do with Total War. That's what I was kind of saying with the announcement trailer of the Hollywood version of history. They draw, like Rome 2, so much inspiration was drawn from Gladiator. It's just a fact. Like, the fact that they're not leaning into a Troy-like aesthetic is actually kind of surprising to me. I guess with Three Kingdoms kind of showing off their artsy side a little bit. Probably a different developer entirely. Or a different team entirely. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go over this PC Gamer article that goes into a little bit more detail. Fraser Brown posted on September 19th, 2019. Total War is going further into the past than it's ever gone before, back to the Bronze Age. A Total War saga Troy will pit Greeks, Trojans, and their allies against each other as they fight over the indomitable city and blah 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 blah. Release date... Sophia. Yeah, it is a different team. Multiple Total War series on the go. Creative Assembly now has several teams in the UK as well as a newer publisher or a newer studio in Bulgaria. That team used to be Crytek Black Sea before it was acquired in 2017 by publisher Sega. It's been working on Total War DLC since then, and we know now a Total War saga Troy. So the setting. One very long siege wouldn't make for a great Total War game, but thankfully Troy goes beyond its namesake. The action will take place across the Aegean. The geographical area it covers is smaller, but the map will be comparable to Rome 2. So it's still a big ol' sandbox. You see, that's pretty much the inverse of what I was saying when I was complaining about the campaign map. Having a zoomed-in perspective, while not necessarily a bad thing, it's still inherently limiting because we're in Greece, you know? And I get that's the point, and in that aspect, it works here, and I think that their design philosophy for campaign maps just works better in general for saga-like games, but at the same time, I'm not into Total War for the sagas. I'm into Total War for the big games. And what I was saying earlier is that my issue is the saga maps seem like they are the gold standard in terms of which maps are the you know, the big sellers nowadays. Like Rome 2's map, Three Kingdoms map especially. Like it's very much the same vibe, where it's very, very narrowed in some places. Like the mountains in South China, man, nightmare fuel. But anyway, being a sandbox means that history and myths aren't etched in stone. The Homeric epic, the Iliad, serves as the main source, and you can follow the path of the literature if you're so inclined, putting together a big army of Greeks or Athenians if you want to be pedantic, chasing after Paris and Helen, and eventually besieging Troy. But depending on which of the 8 factions you pick, things could play out very differently. If you're playing for the other side, maybe as Hector, the Trojan prince, you can forget all about doing your old man's bidding and steal Troy for yourself. Or you could just hop on a boat and head to Greece, cutting your enemies off before they set sail. With auto-resolves. Or not auto-resolve, but island battles. I said that earlier. It was island battles, not auto-resolve. We will island battles. Who wants to have awesome ships boarding each other and then, yeah. Troy has god and monsters. Kind of. Greek myths are full of gods and monsters, and Homer's epic poems are no different. Creative Assembly Sophia wants to capture the mythical elements of the game, mythical elements of the war, but this is still very much a historic total war. The studio says it's trying to present the truth behind the myths. The gods influence events because the Greeks and Trojans believed they could. Zeus and Ares aren't going to be wandering around and smiting people, but by honoring the gods, by building temples or winning battles, you'll be able to reap rewards. Alternatively, you could screw up the relationship your enemies have with the gods. Monsters and mythical beasties, on the other hand, will show up in battles. We already know that you'll be able to recruit a Minotaur to serve as a hero, while conquering a specific region will give you access to centaurs. The Minotaur, however, is just a burly bloke wearing a bull skull and wielding a massive axe. The centaurs, meanwhile, are just regular humans on horseback, though that does make them pretty special in a game where there's almost no cavalry units. Which is also kind of the most interesting aspect of this entire setting. On the box, like, just in the elevator pitch, this is the most interesting aspect. There are obviously infinite systems that you could pile onto this to make it more interesting, kind of the way Attila did the fire spread mechanic in cities, and kind of what this game is doing too, because there's more, supposedly going to be like more terrain features, like mud that can bog your units down, things like that. But at the core of this setting, having an emphasis on hoplite warfare, no cav, more chariots, that could be interesting if it's served up properly. And by served up properly, I mean it needs to be different than it has been, because we've played this, for me, 4 times. This has been my 4th time if you include mods. Hoplite warfare, going back to the oldies and goodies. And at the same time, trying to mix it up with beasties and gods sounds great. Having Minotaurs be just a dude hero, like a single entity hero with an axe and stuff, not the greatest, in my opinion. Because is that the truth behind the myth? Still just seems like bullshit. The idea that centaurs are just cav, that could be interesting. Like, I can see why it's interesting, but the idea that they're saying, like, just the way that the PR is trying to sell this, as far as, like, even kind of, like, PC Gamer here, they headlined it as Troy has gods and monsters, kind of. And it's, you know, it's funny, because, you know, they're trying to make an interesting little headline. But it's also kind of true, because that's pretty much how CA has been trying to sell us the idea. It's almost like they know that we expected to have actual mythical creatures, and it's like they know that the setting that they're trying to pitch should probably have them, but they don't. And so that's why they decided to, because if it was me, I would have never brought up the Minotaur at all. Ever. I wouldn't have brought it up at all. I would have let it been something for the players to find. I would have been like, nope, there are no Minotaurs, there are no mythical creatures, is what I would have said. There are no monsters, mythical creatures, that kind of thing. That way when the player base gets the game, they can find all these little, because that's what you did with it, you know? You obviously were going to have to do something with it, but the fact that, I don't know, it's such a, you know, you can't have that, but here's something that's not like that, did we do good? Kind of idea. Like, it's such an awkward PR moment for them that I really wish they just didn't say anything about it at all. Anyway. Achilles, Agamemnon, Hector, and that Minotaur cosplayer are some of the heroic characters you'll encounter, blessed with improbably devastating fighting skills, like Three Kingdoms characters that can take on entire units by themselves. There's a ranking system for them, But even if there wasn't, they'd probably still be a bunch of showboaters, which is why they like to challenge each other in the middle of battles. These challenges are a bit like Three Kingdoms duels, but after a certain amount of time, heroes can disengage without penalties, so they're not quite as deadly as their predecessors. Heroes will be able to undertake their own epic quests beyond the campaign goals. Odysseus, for instance, gets to go on his infamous Odyssey, taking him to Troy and back again as he fights off his wife's suitors. Completing these quests will net heroes with legendary weapons and other benefits, like Odysseus' son joining the fray as a new hero. What are the battles like? Possibly the biggest change to the real-time battles is the absence of horses. Aside from chariots and the occasional centaur, horses don't really feature in the fights at all. Historically, they were status symbols or used for transportation. The historical limitations has forced Creative Assembly Sophia to reconsider combat and give infantry more to do. There are flanking and anti-flanking abilities. Soldiers can switch between different weapons or stances, and the environment now throws more obstacles in their way, including muddy ground that slows them down. Maybe your troops will get stuck in the mud, making them an easy target, but then you order them to switch from two-handed spears to a spear and shield stance, offering them more protection at the cost of some damage. And you see, that's interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out in terms of implementation, because even with the return of stances into a historic game, it can be done in a way where if the rosters aren't complementary with the maps, then all of the special abilities could be just moot, since the game isn't fun. It's kind of how in Thrones of Britannia, it was just shield wall versus shield wall. It became very grindy. It became just a meat grinder of big, burly, Norse-looking dudes just wailing on each other. Could be the same here, where it's almost like Rome 2's version of playing as Athens or Sparta, where you just have, except less, because you don't have shot cav or anything. You're just hoplite fighting hoplites. Like, even if I can switch stance and get buffs to certain stats and debuffs to other stats, how does that fundamentally change the flow of the battle to where it becomes more interesting than just hoplites versus hoplites? Like, I don't see that, again, the battle environment being more interesting. That could help it, for sure. But I don't know. I don't know. That's why naval combat, again, is definitely something that's needed here. It could have been another gameplay avenue to vary the moment-to-moment gameplay to where you're not playing the same battle, the same siege, 4 times an hour, and that's your game. Rinse and repeat for 300 turns, and then never pick up the game again because you've seen everything. That is definitely what needed to happen, though. Like, there's so much of these historic games that need to go into Warhammer. The diplomacy, unit stances, formation stances, duels. Duels is such a huge one. Like, having duels in Warhammer, such a missed opportunity. Naval combat as well. Just so many missed opportunities. The Trojan horse is one of the most famous, infamous, and ridiculous military gambits, but since it's so silly and is somehow even less believable than Greek gods kicking off a war just because they're assholes, there won't be a literal wooden horse. Instead, there will be events and actions inspired by it, such as earthquakes that weaken Troy's walls. There will be events and actions inspired by it, such as earthquakes that weaken Troy. I don't follow that. I don't follow how a wooden horse equals earthquakes that weaken Troy's walls. This is actually a real theory, that the wooden horse actually represented earthquakes because both horses and earthquakes were the domain of Poseidon, who hated the city. Now, this is just me thinking of something off the top of my head because I've never really considered it. If the stylized warfare of Mycenaeans didn't really survive. Like, there's very little hard evidence of how these cultures fought on the field. There's less evidence of that than there is of the Trojan horse. Meaning, and I don't mean like, it was, I don't mean to say that their evidence is equivalent. I'm just saying there's more instances of evidence of the Trojan horse, even if it is stuff just like paintings, My first instinct would be that it was probably a siege tower. That's what I would think. It would be just a big siege tower that they rolled up to the city walls at night, and it was like a gift, from Poseidon. It was like that kind of almost like war propaganda kind of idea, where it's like how it's basically like if 1,000 years from now, scholars thought that we were literally trying to gift Hitler bombs with messages on them. Like we were trying to hand them to them and genuinely exchange gifts. Like that kind of idea. If it was something like that, I don't know. And I'm just pulling that completely out of my ass. But that's what I think about. I don't... The idea that it's so metaphorical as to mean, like, no, there was no structure built on the field, or there was no iconography more directly literal than an earthquake. I don't know. That's kind of a stretch, I think. What the fuck do I know? I'm just an oil field guy. Total War Saga Troy has a cashless economy. Instead of amassing loads of cash, you'll need to procure a variety of resources to keep your empire ticking. Wood is needed for buildings and eventually stone, and if you're starting to run a deficit, don't expect buildings to stay standing. Don't expect buildings to stay standing. So now if your economy goes into the tank, your buildings start to crumble? That sounds fucking awful. That sounds fucking awful. There's so much of campaigning that, at least in Medieval 2, like, you could deficit spend, Like, you can actually function a little bit when you're in the red because you had an army or something. Like, you had one of the three where it was like you had influence, money, or power. And if you had an army, but, like, the Pope hated you and you were broke, then you could still do stuff. If you had lots of money, but no army and no influence around you diplomatically, you could still do stuff. Here, though, if you lose resources, apparently you start to lose buildings, which means your economy collapses, which means you lose your armies. What is what I feel like that means. Or maybe, like, do units have upkeep? The way that buildings seemingly have upkeep? If you start running a deficit, don't expect buildings to stay standing. That seems like such a ridiculous idea. Soldiers, on the other hand, need food and bronze. So if you can keep food and bronze, then you'll keep your armies. The rarest and most valuable resource is gold, which can be used to barter with other factions or from visiting foreign traders. A large number of specialized settlements will help you keep your stores full, though other factions will also be eyeing them up. Some sources can also be depleted, so you'll need to be the first to exploit them if you want all the gold or wood. Troy won't have ship battles, but it will have agents. So good, they're bringing back agents at least. Total War has yet to make ship battles compelling, and while they did appear in Thrones of Britannia, they won't be returning for this saga. While ships are heavily involved, what with the Aegean taking up so much space, they're largely for transportation. Troy will feature agents, however, despite them being missing for a few years. Warhammer, Thrones, and Three Kingdoms all found ways to replace them, largely by giving more abilities to leaders and heroes. They're the usual suspects like spies and priests, and while they won't fight in battles, they can be sent to infiltrate cities or make the gods happy. And that is about it. There's definitely potential here. There's absolutely the potential for this game to be good. It's just shaky. It's very shaky. They really need to nail this game for the sake of the Saga's sub franchise that they're trying to make. And I don't know. It's such an odd ask in terms of where we go from here. Whenever we get some some actual campaign gameplay, in terms of how diplomacy plays out, how hero interactions play out, the idea of resources being changed up, that's really promising moving forward. I really like that idea in terms of broadening the systems involved in the campaign. That's really good. That's a really great sign. And it's a great sign for modders. I mean, having less specific gameplay systems like that means the game has a broader a broader ability to create gameplay mechanics, but it also means that same thing for modders, which is really the most exciting part. But yeah, could be great. Could be great. Could be a steaming pile of poodoo. Of bantha poodoo. But who the fuck knows? I certainly don't. I'm just sitting here talking at my webcam when I should be asleep several hours ago. So I don't know. I had to get some thoughts out of my head, and really, like, at first I was very against the idea, but even going through all the stuff, all the information, just kind of reminding myself that it could be good, because I really wanted, like, in this sort of setting, not having some Asian mythology level shenanigans is just, it's not a waste, but it's a missed opportunity. And I don't know. I really think that in terms of the type of games they're picking for sagas, I don't know. the kind of game for sagas would be taking, like they said in the offset, that it was going to be taking already released games and narrowing their focus so that they can expand on specifics of certain conflicts. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but this is, like, really broad. Like, I don't know. This seems unambitiously ambitious. This seems like such an odd choice for what is supposed to be a small project, Like, why not do Hannibal Barca's campaign? There was already, like, some DLC about that in Rome 2. But how about the fight against Epirus? How about the fight against the Germans? How about just pick something, How about Ragnar Lothbrok's campaigns against early Britain? All those things are referenced, yeah. But that's the point of the Sagas game, I thought, was to take those moments and to, like, make them more important and focus on them more. Not, let's go to a setting that we have never been to before. That's crazy to me. Like, Thrones of Britannia worked more in terms of, like, it made sense to my brain, because I was just like, okay, well, yeah, you say that sagas are going to be smaller, or not smaller, but a narrower scope game, a more focused setting. Makes sense that you would do Thrones of Britannia, because you did Attila, you did Rome 2, which led directly into Attila, which leads directly, or I don't know exactly what the timeline is, but it is actually, I think, yeah, Thrones of Britannia, I think, is before Attila, right? Yeah. And like that jives in terms of like what to expect. This shit here, that makes no sense to me. That makes absolutely no sense to me. Because again, it's a setting that, while historically adjacent to something they have done with Rome 2, it's so drastically different that not having Cav is a big deal. Having this setting with no Romans and one like monoculture warfare in hoplite warfare, that's a gamble. That's an absolute gamble. And you know it. CA, you know it's a gamble because you gave us a Minotaur cosplayer. And expect it to be okay. Which could be. I need to end this before I keep just getting shitty to CA. It could be great. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to find out more about it. I can't wait to play all Total War. That's just how it is with me. I will always play Total War. I will mod the shit out of it, and etc. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let's also, what kind of mods should I give a shot? Like, is there anything for any of the Total War games that you would like to see on this channel? Let me know down below. Thank you for joining me. Guess I'll go ahead and end it here. Hello, read this. Have fun, bud. Bye.